Good evening. Guys, we're going to go ahead and get started. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. Tonight we have a very special guest.
Sharon Willis.
Governor John Bel Edwards
Join the meeting
tonight. So we'll go ahead and get started. Elliot. Can I hear it?
Seemed like they froze.
Shirley Warren.
President Mike, is there any kind of way we can call them and let them know they froze?
Join the meeting. Join the meeting.
Thank you. Is Dr. Cole on the line? Dr. Cole?
Dr. Charles Cole. Get Reverend Roosevelt Grant. What's your leaders in invocation?
Let us all pray. Gracious Heavenly Father, we come to you at this time, this hour, saying thank you, Lord. We come saying thank you, Lord, for your grace and thank you for your mercy. And Lord, we pray at this time that you allow your Holy Spirit to be part of this meeting this evening. And Father, that we'll come to one accord, that we're all the same in your eyesight. And we just want to say thank you. Thank you for everyone who's taking part in this call, Heavenly Father. And Father, we know we all need you and we can't get along without you. But one thing we all do, Lord, we want to recognize your son, Jesus Christ. And Father, we want to thank you for leading Michael McClanahan in directing this meeting tonight. And thank you for the governor who's taking part in this meeting tonight. And that we all share common ideas and thoughts tonight, God. And we'll come to an agreement that we need to do whatever it takes to make Louisiana better. We need to do whatever it takes to make the NAACP better. So we just want to say thank you, Father. Thank you for hearing our prayer. And thank you for answering us. We pray this in the mighty name of Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen and amen.
Righty. Thank you so much, Reverend Roosevelt Grant, for that awesome prayer. Due to our time constraints tonight, we're going to welcome our Governor, John Bel Edwards, on with us tonight. We're so happy that he has joined us tonight. And Dr. McClanahan, if you don't mind, we're going to go ahead into our Q&A unless you want to have something to say first.
Yeah, let me chime in right quick.
Okay.
Good afternoon, as always. I want to thank you all for getting on the call and being dutiful and being obedient to the word, for taking care of your business. Why don't you all mute your phones? Mute your phones. Just mute your phones when you get on. Everybody mute your phone. Just mute your phone. Mute whatever your device you're on, and we'll get through with it. And I want to thank you all for again taking care of God's business. We have a very special guest with us tonight. I don't know if you all have been around in 2008 through 2016. We had a full governor. We were last in everything that was good, and we were first in everything that was bad.
Join the meeting.
Budget was cut. Gramblin's budget was cut. We were all running for the hills and they didn't know what to return. But God had what you call term limits for governor. And we got rid of that person, that fool we had as governor. And he brought us somebody that we could sit down and talk to, somebody that could relate to us, somebody who has an open door policy. The NAACP president, we have met with the governor, John Bel Edwards, on a number of occasions. He always tells me, come back because he's going to leave the light on because I'm going to come back. Because we are serious about God's business, serious about the people's business. And the governor is too. When he got elected, we no longer last because we were first in Medicaid expansion. And also we had criminal justice reform. We had a lot of things going for us. Southern's budget was restored, Gramblin's budget was restored, and we were allowed to go to Shreveport this weekend and beat Grambling. And so we want to thank the governor to be a part of the NAACP's meeting tonight, and we're appreciative of the things that he's done. We don't always agree, and he knows we don't always agree, but those things that we do agree on, we work together on. And that's all we ask of anybody. If you occupy the governor's match and you're the leader of this state, we just want to have an ear and have an ability to sit down and talk to you. And Governor John Bel Edwards has been there for us, and we're going to be there for him. We've shown him before, and we'll continue to show him long as he stays in God's hand and lead these people in the right direction. He can count on the NAACP to be there for him. So without further ado, I want to present to some and introduce others. The best governor in this whole United States, the only Democratic governor in the Deep South, our governor, our friend, John Bel Edwards.
Thank you very much. That's the best Zoom introduction I've ever had, for sure. And I see this Q&A. I did want to share some thoughts with all of you. First of all,
there are some reasons why.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think I'm good now. Thank you, President McClanahan. I appreciate the invitation.
Join the meeting.
All of you this evening. And I do want to just make sure, because I hear some background. President, you can hear me, right?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, got it. So thank you all very much for the opportunity to be with you this evening. And I want to start by congratulating my friend, President Mike McClanahan, for his recent election to the National Board of the NAACP. I had an opportunity to do that personally a while back, but that is an impressive honor for anybody from and
Join the meeting.
again, tell you how
Dr.
impressed I am
Join the meeting.
with your election. And it is good to see people a little more often. You know, it's been a tough year in Louisiana, a really tough year all across the country, all across the world. I do know that we're in a better place today. I think we're going to continue to get better, and eventually we're going to pull out of this pandemic and get fully back to normal. And I look forward to being with all of you again as soon as we can. I did want to let you all know that certainly Donna and I have been paying attention to the spate of deaths happening, killings of African American men, especially at the hands of law enforcement around the country. And you know, I just think we have to do better. I don't know whether you heard, but Pat Robertson, the longtime very conservative evangelical leader, he was actually on TV over the weekend talking about how the police in the United States of America are just going to have to do better. And so I do think that we're at that pivotal moment now. And as y'all know, the jury is presently deliberating up in Minnesota. And that whole deal, I think, is going to be critically important for us as well. I do want you to know here in Louisiana, I am supporting House Bill 430 by Representative Ted James that will amend the Bill of Rights for law enforcement officers facing disciplinary action. And it would require that sustained complaints that are against law enforcement officers remain in their personnel files for at least 10 years, but it would also give them a little less time to choose counsel, because while they're selecting counsel, they can't be made to cooperate. And then you'll have a little longer to investigate them if necessary. But these are important changes that were endorsed by the task force created last year by legislation passed by Senator Cleo Fields. And there are some more legislation out there that came from that task force that we're going to be supporting as well. I also want to let you know I appreciate each and every one of you for your contributions to Louisiana. I certainly don't want to fail to thank you all for the help that you gave me in my reelection. And that may not have been 100% of you all, but generally speaking, you all were very supportive. I appreciate it. And I also thank you for your work on Bring Back Louisiana, that campaign for the grassroots vaccination effort that's going on. Your partnership with the state is just tremendous. And your leadership in communities all across the state of Louisiana, helping us to meet people where they are and make vaccine available to them in the most convenient way possible, but also trying to help dispel some of the hesitancy that's out there around vaccine, because really we've lost well over 10,000 people now. And that's just in Louisiana.
Helen Armstrong.
We can't get past this pandemic if we don't get enough people vaccinated. So what you're doing is incredibly important. And you're one of the very few organizations in our state that really has reach into every single parish. So your partnership is critically important. We are still seeing low numbers of infections and hospitalizations, but I'm very thankful for that. But there are variants out there that in other parts of our country, they've already turned things the wrong way. If you look up at the meeting, those variants are in Louisiana as well. The good news is distancing works, masking works, and the vaccinations work against those new variants as well. So as we look to bring back Louisiana, your help, continued help, is going to be really important. Again, we've had a very long and difficult year. It's not over yet, but quite frankly, we don't want post-pandemic Louisiana to look like pre-pandemic Louisiana. We've highlighted, we were actually the first state in the country to highlight the disparate impact that COVID-19, this disease, had on communities of color. And you all will probably remember that back in the late March, April time period, about a year ago, close to 70% of all the deaths in Louisiana from COVID-19 were in the African-American community, even though only 33% of our state is comprised of African-Americans. Obviously, this is unacceptable, and it has to do with the vulnerability that people have to the disease if they have certain comorbid pre-existing health conditions. And those health conditions were more prevalent in the African-American community, and therefore the disease was having a disparate impact. And so we highlighted that. We created the Health Equity Task Force. We started working immediately to try to make sure that we were making resources and information available so that we could have an impact on that. The president mentioned a while ago Medicaid expansion. Had we not expanded Medicaid in 2016 and extended health insurance and primary care and preventative care to hundreds of thousands of working poor Louisianans, and so that they could get the treatment, they could get diagnosed, they could get prescription drugs and actually be healthier. Had we not done that, how many more people would have died from COVID-19? And we don't know that, but I'm certain it would have been many, many more people. So just another example of why it was important to expand Medicaid, but we can't rest on our laurels because we know that we still have an inequitable situation across Louisiana when it comes to access to affordable quality health care and making sure that people have the ability to be healthier. And we know that there are lots of things other than traditional medicine that plays into one's health. And it could be homelessness. It could be socioeconomic factors. It might be people without transportation and that sort of stuff. And we're really working on these things and trying to make sure that we don't lose sight of the fact that COVID-19 put a very bright spotlight on this in Louisiana. Really what happened here was a culmination of years of policies that communities of color and low-income populations have borne for generations. You all are more familiar with that than anybody because you've been fighting to bring justice to these communities for a very long time. And I do believe that together we can make very, very good progress going forward. And I say that because I really believe that with President Biden and Vice President Harris, we're going to have opportunities to bring resources to bear like we haven't in the past. I do want to share with you a few details about the legislative session that we're in. It started last week. It's a 2-month fiscal session. And even though it's a fiscal session, some of the bills will be general subject matter bills that are not fiscal related. You've seen my priorities for the budget, I hope. It is a very good budget for education, where again, we're going to give a pay raise to teachers and support staff in K through 12. I hope that when the REC meets later this month, that they will recognize more general fund revenue, and if so, I made it very clear to the legislature that I want to give an even bigger pay raise to our teachers and support staff. But with respect to higher education, and I heard the president, he was very happy. It seemed that Southern was victorious over Grambling this past weekend in a big way. And by the way, I was at Grambling. I was at Southern the week ago tonight. I was at Grambling at their graduation on Wednesday of last week. And I could sort of tell the people at Southern were really excited about the game coming up. The people at Grambling, not so much. I think they might have known. But with respect to higher education, I will just flat out tell you that the budget I gave the legislature this year is the best budget in 15 years. We're going to fully fund the TOPS program. And it's going to grow by another $13 million or so, but we're also going to increase the Go Grant program. So this is the need-based aid for higher education that when I became governor was at $10 million. It's going to be a $40 million program this year with what we put in the budget. So this is need-based aid because I don't think we should leave anyone behind. But we're also going to make sure that we have funding for faculty pay raises in higher education, plus more funding for the funding formula as well. And then we want to meet the additional costs for mandated costs, I should say. And that should give higher education the flexibility with the funding they're going to get this year, not just to give faculty a pay raise, but to give everybody who works on the campuses a pay raise. So we're excited about the opportunities we have there. If you were paying attention, you know that higher education received money directly from the federal government as well because of COVID, including most recently the American Rescue Plan. And the HBCUs did especially well. The formula was sort of weighted, understanding the particular challenges that they have. And so they did really well. So I'm looking for great things out of higher education in Louisiana. And I think we're going to finally do some things we've been trying to do for a long time. Speaking of higher education, we're working with the Women's Legislative Caucus and people like Senator Regina Barrow from here in Baton Rouge to make sure that faculty and staff and everybody who works on higher education campuses are properly and timely reporting Title IX violations per university and system policies, but also as required by the law. We want people to be safe on our campuses, and we want parents to know that their children are going to be safe when they attend one of our higher education institutions. We work very closely with the Legislative Black Caucus, and there are several pieces of legislation that they're offering this year that are in our package. To one of which is to ensure that pregnant or postpartum workers have reasonable accommodations to promote both the health of the mom and the health of the baby. We continue to have real challenges in Louisiana around maternal mortality, as well as outcomes with respect to newborn health. We've made significant progress. In the last 2 years, we've reduced by 20% the number of maternal fatalities that are caused by hemorrhaging or high blood pressure. But there's a lot more work to do, and Regina Barrow has the bill that I just told you about. We continue to have one of the biggest gender pay gaps in the country. What I'm talking about is the difference between what a man makes and what a woman makes. They have the same
Join the meeting.
qualifications doing the same job. And so we're backing a bill by Representative Carpenter, Barbara Carpenter from here in Baton Rouge. She's the chair of the House Labor Committee. And we want to ban the use of salary history as a condition ban using salary history as a condition of employment. But we also want to promote pay transparency, because if employees can talk to one another about what they make, employers will do better about making sure they're fairly paying their employees. And you know, we have the biggest gap in the country. It's embarrassing. We still have a minimum wage in Louisiana that's set by the federal government. It was last adjusted in 2009. It's $7.25 an hour. And that too is embarrassing. There is nobody who should work for $7.25 an hour in 2021. And so unlike previous years where I supported a specific bill, I support every bill pending in the legislature that will increase the minimum wage. And whichever one they can put on my desk, I'm going to sign it. And that's what I've asked the legislature to do. You know, we've got all these heroes, these frontline essential workers, and they're working, some of them, for minimum wage, and they can't even take care of their essential needs when they work full time. So we have to do better. And quite frankly, if we don't, I'm really hopeful that Congress is going to be able to do what the president and vice president are asking them to do and raise the minimum wage. We want to end discrimination in the setting of auto insurance rates. This got some attention last year, but I will tell you, your credit score matters more than your driving record, and that is just crazy. That is a way to discriminate against poor people, because poor people can be very good drivers, and rich people can be very poor drivers. And we know that. And by the way, your marital status, can influence this and other things as well. So there's a bill by Senator Luno, Senate Bill 55, that would prohibit using those extraneous factors in determining your insurance rates. Cleo Fields, Senator from Baton Rouge, has a bill to make mandatory kindergarten, and I think we should, and we support that. That's in the package as well. We also want to create a statewide coordinator for Americans with Disabilities Act to make sure that state and local government doing everything we can to create environments that are open to everyone in Louisiana, even if you've got a disability. And especially if you have a disability.
Join the
We
meeting.
also want to create the Office of Human Trafficking Prevention in my office so we can do a better job of fighting against human trafficking. So those are just a few of the highlights. We've got a long way to go. We don't adjourn until early June. Do want you all to be involved and certainly reach out to us if there's something that you want to bring our attention to. I will tell you that Dr. Adrian Wilson, I think many of you know him. He works for me, and he's somebody that you should always feel comfortable reaching out to, and he's extremely accessible. So if you remember one thing from my remarks tonight, I want it to be sort of what Reverend Grant prayed about, that we make Louisiana all that she can and should be, just as you all are working to make the NAACP all that it can and should be. And we can only do that together. And you heard the president say there's going to be times, I suspect, when we're not going to agree, but you're going to find that we're in agreement much more often than we're not. You're also going to find that we're in agreement much more often than you're going to have agreement with other statewide elected officials in Louisiana.
Join the meeting.
And so I appreciate all of you. Now, Mr. President, I was given a few questions in advance that came from your members, and I thought I would address those and then maybe take a couple of more, and after that, but and I'll just start here. The next phase of COVID-19. I will tell all of you, I'm not yet sure. The current proclamation goes through April the 28th, a week from Wednesday, and we will keep the public health emergency in place. What restrictions and mitigation measures we keep in place, I'm not sure yet. I don't have the benefit of the briefing that comes from Dr. Courtney Phillips, who, by the way, does a tremendous job as Secretary of the Department of Health. I can tell you, we have honored the president's request of us to make sure that we had a mask mandate in place for the first 100 days that he's president. And so we're going to have to
Join the meeting.
In terms of positivity, in terms of cases, hospitalizations, and deaths. But all of those things, as through today's report, are in pretty good shape. We're a little less than 3% on our positivity. There was a time in early January when we were above 15% as a state. We had about 2,200 people in our hospital at one time with COVID. Today, we have right around 300. And so things are better. I just I can't tell you yet what we're going to do next week. But if next Tuesday, a week from tomorrow, we'll make that announcement. And Mr. President, I was asked about black judgeships in Terrebonne Parish. As you all may know, my office, I supported a remedy to create a sub-district in Terrebonne Parish for minority. And ultimately, the district court here in Baton Rouge granted a remedy that included, I think it was 5 individual districts as opposed to just one sub-district. That went up to the U.S. Fifth Circuit and they reversed in total. So the case is over. There is nothing pending in courts as I understand it right now. And there are no bills filed in the legislature in order to create a minority sub-district in Terrebonne Parish. I do support having a sub-district there, and we'll continue to do that we're going to obviously need to have a legislator introduce legislation, and of course, it's much better if that legislator comes from Terrebonne Parish, because that's where the bill would have effect. Let's see. I had a question about me expressing that I've got a request into the president to meet with him to talk to President Biden about both the importance of the oil and gas industry to Louisiana, to the country, but questions also about what we can do in Louisiana to diversify our economy and make sure that we are pursuing things like renewable energy and minimizing the adverse impact that we have from some of our chemical manufacturing facilities and refineries and things like that. I have requested that meeting. I've already had a number of conversations, including with the Secretary of Energy under Governor Biden, with Gina McCarthy, who is the U.S. climate czar. I've had conversations with other members of his administration, and I do hope to meet with him soon, because I genuinely believe that Louisiana, which has been an oil and gas state forever, I was at an Exxon event tonight before this event started. They've had a refinery here in Louisiana since 1909, but at the same time, the future is not going to be fossil fuels, it's going to be renewables, and there's going to be a transition period. And so we need to make sure that we take advantage of the next 10, 20 years, whatever that transition period is going to be, so that we not only produce oil and gas here and maintain that part of our economy and those jobs and so forth, but that we use that time also to develop our renewables and do a better job of cleaning up our environment. And you're seeing that. You know, since I became governor, we actually achieved attainment for the clean air standards in every part of Louisiana. But we're also focusing on things like carbon capture, so the carbon dioxide that gets emitted in the chemical manufacturing, that we're gonna be able to capture that and then transport it and sequester it. So that it's never in the environment. And we also announced last year the #2 economic development deal anywhere in the country, $9.2 billion, where they're going to start refining diesel out of corn and soybeans. So moving away from fossil fuels, but to renewables like corn and soybeans. And that's in Baton Rouge. In North Louisiana, we're very close to making an announcement where they want to do it out of pine trees. And both of those refineries are going to capture their carbon and sequester it as well. But wind energy off the Gulf is something that we are pursuing as well. And I've had conversations with President Biden's director of BOEM, the Bureau of, I can't think of exactly what it stands for at the moment. Not one of those senior moments. But I've had conversations with her about wind energy in Louisiana. You may not know it, but we have companies in Louisiana that have been fabricating offshore oil platforms forever. Well, they can fabricate offshore wind platforms too, and they've actually done it up in the Northeast. Well, we want them to put them to work here in Louisiana and put those windmills out in the Gulf next to our drilling platforms and show that there's a future here as well. And so we believe that we can do that. We can have a tremendous positive impact on our climate. As you all probably know, we have a 50-year, $50 billion master plan for the coast. And that's because we are more impacted by climate change in Louisiana than in any other state. We have the perfect trifecta of coastal erosion, subsidence, and sea level rise, all getting us at the same time. And we are investing more right now to preserve our coast than at any point in our history. And when the projects get completed that are currently underway in Louisiana, at least by the modeling, we will be producing more land than we're losing. for the first time in many, many decades. So all of that's very important, and I'm trying to meet with the president about that to let him know that we support his agenda. And in fact, I created a climate initiatives task force last year where we committed ourselves to the Paris Accords of being net zero in emissions by 2050. That's the same goal the president has. And we're able to have that goal in a traditional oil and gas state. And I really believe that if he can show some early progress in a state like Louisiana, then they're just going to be tremendously successful. Another question deals with redistricting. So, we just had the decennial census. It was in 2020. And the Census Bureau hasn't yet sent out the data on what the census produced, but it looks like they're going to do that sometime, maybe as late as September, which is really late. Once the data becomes available, then the legislature will have to engage in redistricting. Whether it's the state legislature, House and Senate, the Supreme Court, the congressional districts, public service commission districts, all of that stuff. And this question has to do with congressional districts. We have 6 in Louisiana. It appears we're going to keep 6. We won't lose one, and we're not going to gain one. But if a third of the voters are minority voters, then you would think that if you've got 6 districts, you ought to have 2 that are minority districts. Certainly, that would be a great outcome. And it's essential that we have fair maps where voters get to choose their representatives rather than the representatives getting to choose who the voters are. So I'm 100% for that. The question is, will you veto or approve a congressional map that does not include a second minority district? Well, I have to see what the bill looks like when it comes to my desk and see how many minorities are in each of the 6 districts that are out there, and so forth, and then look and see what sort of an effort was made, and if it was made to either pack certain districts like the current 2nd district in order to avoid creating a second minority district, or whether rather than packing, they wanted to dilute all of the minority voters out there. I will tell you, it's a real challenge now because the U.S. Supreme Court has basically gotten rid of Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act. It's one of the things that the current Democrats in Congress, both House and Senate, and the Biden administration want to reenact. They're trying to figure out how to get it done in light of the 60-vote threshold that you have to overcome a filibuster or cloture, as they call it, in the Senate. But it's going to be a real challenge. But I am working with members of the legislature now to try to make sure that we have fair maps. I hope we can do that with the 2nd district. I just think that we need to have more competitive districts for sure, and certainly if there's a way to draw a 2nd district that has a majority of minority voters, I am 100% in support of doing that. I don't typically issue veto threats before I actually see the bill and look at the votes and see what percentage of the people in the legislature voted for something. Because if I have to have at least a third plus one in the House and the Senate to sustain a veto, if I don't have that many votes, then the veto doesn't mean much. But I don't issue veto threats in advance. But I can tell you, we're going to, not just in the congressional districts, but in the House and in the Senate, we're going to be looking to make sure that we have much fairer districts than we currently have. And quite frankly, one of the only ways to get there may be a veto threat, because if they don't feel like I'll veto a bill, then they may not have reason to be fair. The last question that I had given to me in advance, what is the process for gubernatorial endorsement of a candidate? We know that in the last election cycle, you endorsed or backed several candidates. Can you share your reasoning for not endorsing the top Democratic congressional candidate in the 5th congressional district race? Yeah, there is not a formal process that I use. If you go back from the time that I was elected, sparingly have I gotten involved in other races, whether it was in my first term or in my second term. And quite frankly, I've always believed that endorsements are overrated, but that doesn't mean that I don't endorse on occasion. Typically, when I do that, I have a personal relationship with the individual that I'm endorsing, and one that both leads me to believe and know that they're a superior candidate for the job that they're running for. But secondly, it's a relationship where I know that individual did an awful lot of work to support me, and whether I was running for the legislature or for governor. For example, last year I was very pleased to endorse Adrian Perkins as a candidate for Senate. At the end of the day, it didn't do much good if you just looked at the returns. But he and I have a West Point connection. He worked really hard in my reelection for governor, and I just know him. I personally know him and friends with him. He actually worked in my governor's office before he ever became the mayor of Shreveport. So I endorsed him, but I just don't do that very often, quite frankly. And if you remember, there were not a lot of other endorsements that Mayor Perkins got, even from prominent African Americans in and around Louisiana. So that sort of gives you what my thought process there is. I do believe that if you endorse too often and you don't have good results in the races where you make endorsements, then you do sort of undermine your own viability or strength, maybe is a better word. And so I just try not to endorse very often. It's just something I just think is not wise from that perspective. I think those are the questions that I had in advance, Mr. President. I can potentially take a couple of more before we wrap up this evening, but I do want to tell you how much I appreciate all of the opportunity to do this, and I'm looking forward to being able to come back and actually be in the same room with everybody and see everybody's face at once and that sort of stuff. But right now, this really is the responsible way to gather, and it's the safe way to gather. And I want to thank you for doing it this way, because we still have several hundred people in Louisiana a day being newly diagnosed with COVID, and we still have hundreds of people in the hospital. We have 10 or 12, 20 people a day dying from COVID. So I just thank you for the seriousness that you all bring to this whole issue. And the safety, and quite frankly, I wish everybody else would do it this way. And I do believe that in the not too distant future, we're going to be able to return to a greater sense of normalcy. With that, Mr. President, I'm going to stop and give you back the controls.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Thank you, Governor. We would like to thank you. We have a few questions for you, Governor. They sent me probably about 500. I'm going to give you
500.
It's real fast. We know we're a working group, Governor. We don't tolerate. We have the man at our disposal. We want to make sure we give him all we got, right? And so the first question is, will you pardon wrongfully convicted persons if evidence shows that they were wrongfully convicted or are now incarcerated?
Well, I mean, I certainly would. I don't know of a single case that I've ever had come to me from the pardon board where there's evidence in the file that says the person was wrongfully convicted. But clearly, and by the way, I signed a lot more pardons than my predecessor, for sure. But I certainly would if I believed that someone was wrongfully convicted, just like I signed pardons for people who weren't wrongfully convicted, but they were convicted a long time ago, and I believe that they have served all the time that they need to serve for the crime they committed, and that they truly are different people today than they were back when they committed the crime, so that they don't pose a threat to society, and there really isn't a real reason or benefit to keeping those individuals incarcerated. Clearly, if I had evidence in the file or some reason to believe someone was wrongfully convicted, but what I want everybody to understand, because different states are different, the Constitution does not give me plenary authority to pardon someone just because I want to. So in order for me to pardon someone in Louisiana, I have to have a favorable recommendation from the pardon board that I can either grant or deny. And there are some states out there where I believe the governor has plenary authority. If they just know an individual was convicted at some point, for whatever reason, that governor, he or she wants to pardon them, they can do it. I don't have that authority in Louisiana. So someone has to be eligible to bring a petition for clemency before the pardon board. The pardon board has to favorably recommend the pardon. Then it comes to me, and I say yes or no. But I can only say yes or no as to those individuals. And so I did want to make sure that you all are aware of that, because other than that, if there's a claim of actual innocence and it's not before me, it's got to work its way back through the judicial system. The Constitution just doesn't give me that authority.
Okay, all right, Governor. I think Yolanda might have a follow-up to that one. Go ahead, Yolanda.
Yes, sir. Governor, what, if anything, is being done with the prison population for those that may qualify for early release due to COVID and the threat of spread in congregate living? Are we using any of our programs, to prevent homelessness in this population as a result of such releases?
Yeah, well, first of all, Ms. Singleton, that is a great question. And I will tell you overall, and nothing is ever perfect. And we were all on a very steep learning curve, especially at first. I have been incredibly impressed with the way the Department of Corrections has worked through this pandemic up to now, but also how inmates have handled this, and how they have been very serious about washing their hands and wearing masks and taking care of one another. And I'm gonna give you this example. As you know, we have a very high prison population in Louisiana. It's too high, and it's much lower than it was when I became governor. It was much, much lower. But when you have people of all different ages living in congregate settings, very close together, many of whom do have illnesses, then if COVID, if that virus gets into that setting, a lot of times it can spread very rapidly, and you end up having all sorts of people in the hospital and dying. And for example, we saw that in nursing homes, where you had, again, an aging population in a congregate setting with those underlying health conditions. And at one time, a few months into the pandemic, 40% of all of our deaths were in a nursing home. As of right now, we've had less than 40 deaths in our prison system among inmates for COVID. We've had 6 correctional officers. 2 of them were actually wardens who got COVID and died. And so they worked very hard to minimize the transmission, to take care of people if they were symptomatic and sick and so forth. And the numbers really do bear that out. I will tell you, early on, we set up a system. We don't have plenary authority to do this, and so we had to work within the confines of the statutory authorities that we had to take individuals who had served a certain amount of time in prison and were close enough to their release that they could be considered for early release. And quite frankly, that did produce some results. It wasn't as much as I had hoped, There were not as many individuals who got out early through that mechanism as I would have liked. And the way we were doing that, it required the consent and the participation of a number of different groups, not just me and the Secretary of the Department of Corrections. But we set that system up, we worked it. It did produce some results for some individuals, but clearly not all that we would have liked. Now, I will tell you, with respect to when we release people, trying to prevent homelessness, you know, they're doing things now at the Department of Corrections we haven't done before. I'm never going to tell you that it's perfect, that we don't make mistakes and so forth. But there's a lot more instruction and pre-release training and preparation that goes into that. We work very hard to make sure people have a state issued identification by the time they get out. And then we also work where possible to enroll people in Medicaid before they get out, especially if they need a mental health treatment or a substance abuse treatment. And if it's substance abuse, we will actually start those treatments while they're still in prison, and then make appointments for them to continue that when they get out. And it doesn't cost them anything because they have that Medicaid card. So those are some of the things that we are doing. I know that it's having a positive impact, but it's still a really big challenge in a state like Louisiana. And again, I'm not going to tell you that we're doing everything perfectly and that things are just the way that I would want them to be. But I will tell you that I lost an awful lot of sleep in the first few months of the pandemic, worried that the COVID-19 was just going to run through our prisons and cause an awful lot of deaths. And I'm so thankful that that has not been the case. And that's not happenstance. That's a lot of hard work by corrections officials, but also by the inmates themselves.
All right, thank you, Governor. One last question, Governor. You know that you have persons on the call from all over the great state of Louisiana, and we appreciate your leadership. One thing that's lacking in rural America, rural Louisiana, especially rural North Louisiana, is internet access. What are you going to do to help provide internet access for people in rural Louisiana and North Louisiana?
Yeah, first of all, that is a great question. And so COVID put a bright light on our healthcare delivery system and the inequitable impact of COVID for the reasons I went through before. But when we had to go to distance learning, it also put a bright spotlight on areas where you don't have enough high-speed internet and devices so that children can learn at home over the internet, on a computer, and so forth. And so very challenging. I spent the overwhelming majority of the discretionary money they gave me for K through 12 education on devices, by the way, both computers and wireless, because we didn't have the time to get fiber into people's homes. But the wireless devices that can connect people to what do they call them, MiFis, and what it escapes me right now. But we spent tens of millions of dollars on that for school districts, and many school districts spent their own money. But that's not the long-term answer. As it happens, my very first meeting today lasted for about an hour and a half, and it was all about the $180 million that we're going to get from the American Rescue Plan to do internet, high-speed internet in Louisiana in unserved areas. And right now, we are doing a crowdsourcing mapping of Louisiana. The Delta Regional Authority is paying for it. And I should have the link. I don't have it for you right now. But what we can do is we can get you to help people go and take part in this survey, but it maps the state of Louisiana. And it'll tell us where we have internet, where we don't, and where people think it's high speed, but it's really not. And that's going to help us make allocation decisions. But one of the first things we're going to be working on is $180 million that we have to expand broadband in Louisiana to unserved areas. And quite frankly, the market was never enough to convince private providers like AT&T and Cox and others to run that fiber all the way to those last homes and to those rural areas. You just didn't have a density of population where that they could get a return on their investment. So what we're looking to do is to give grants to private providers. They're going to have to come up with a match of some amount, but it could be 25% private, 75% state. But they're going to have to go into these unserved areas where they haven't gone before. The internet's going to have to be true high-speed internet, and it's going to have to be affordable. Otherwise, they don't qualify for the grant. And then we're going to turn around, I pray, and put a lot more money into this effort with an infrastructure package that the president and the vice president are talking about right now in Congress, because a big part of that is going to be broadband as well. And on top of all of that, the FCC has initiatives out there. I don't know if you know it, but one of the big winners in a auction that happened in Louisiana last fall was Elon Musk and his company, and they're going to be putting in wireless high-speed internet for a lot of unserved areas of Louisiana as well. Now that's a good bridge. It's not what we're looking for, because we want to get that fiber into people's homes, and we want to try to make sure that it's true high-speed internet, and that you have the ability to use 4 devices in that home without degrading the service. And so that's what we're going to be pushing for. We're going to be working with local governments. By the way, the local governments, whether they're towns, villages, cities, or whether they're parishes, they all have money coming because of the American Rescue Plan, and they too can invest in high-speed internet. That's one of the allowable expenditures. And when we do this, businessmen and business people are going to be more competitive. Farmers are going to be more efficient and productive. People are going to be able to do telehealth visits without ever leaving their home. You're going to have people being able to learn better at school, and quality of life is going to be enhanced. And my prediction is going to be that you're going to have less people leaving rural Louisiana going to more urban settings, because they're going to be able to stay home and have the benefits of high-speed internet. And now, unlike my predecessor, he actually turned away $80 or $90 million for high-speed internet. We're not turning away a single dime in Louisiana while I'm governor, and we're asking for more. And I really believe that you're going to see us come up with a plan here shortly. We won't know until May the 10th what the rules are going to be about the expenditure of this money, but we're not waiting. We're putting together a plan now. We're working with the legislature, and we're going to work with local government, because we are in a race against time. High-speed internet is critically important, and I know from your question, Mr. President, you fully understand that, and I really believe we're going to deliver. Now, the truth is, we got $180 million. If I had $1 billion, I could spend $1 billion on high-speed internet. But the 180 will be more than we've ever spent before. And if we can get a few hundred million more from the infrastructure package, you're going to see a tremendous difference in Louisiana, all over our state. And the area that is clearly the most unserved right now is Northeast Louisiana.
Governor, we really appreciate you. We will have you come back. Our state convention will be here in Baton Rouge on September the 16th through the 19th at the Marriott. You will get an invitation to come and be a part of our 79th anniversary. We appreciate all you do for the great state of Louisiana. We know that your time is what we value, that you thought enough of the NAACP to come spend an hour or so with us today.
All right,
Appreciate you.
look,
So all
Mr. President, September 16th will be my 55th birthday.
All right.
So I if you invite me, I'll come spend part of my 55th birthday with you.
I tell you, we're gonna have some cake and ice cream for you too.
You got it. Thank you.
Thank you,
God
Governor.
bless y'all.
Y'all give the governor a round of applause, please. Thank you. Thank you, Governor. Appreciate all you do.
Thank you so much. God bless.
God bless you too. All right, that was a good deal, man. We appreciate the governor stopping by, spending a little time with us, and Dr. Wilson for all that he does for the governor of the state of Louisiana. We appreciate you all for being dutiful. Please forgive those hiccups at the beginning. I don't know how they happen, but they happen. You know what can go wrong? Will go wrong as Newt law, but you know we stayed cool on the fire. We got through it. We had 100-something persons from all over the state of Louisiana on the call. That's wonderful. I appreciate that. You know, you all had some great questions. We asked them about 8 or 9. There, you all kept sending me questions, but you know we had limited time. We would get those questions to him in some form or fashion. You know, we just have to keep digging down, keep doing what we do. You know, not only will the governor come, but you'll see other persons come because they value what you all say, but more importantly, they value what you all
Join the
do.
meeting.
Keep doing the right thing, and I promise you, more people will come, but more great things will come for our people. We don't just fight for one another, we fight for our people and God's people. So thank you all. Right quick, you all do know that elections are coming up Saturday. Don't look like y'all are stunned like elections. Yeah, elections are coming up. We have to beat the trees to get people out to vote. We have to get people to the polls to vote. There is a local elections somewhere in your area, but there's also a congressional election as well as the Bessie Board election. We have an opportunity to elect a sister to the Bessie Board, Cassie Williams. We have an opportunity to elect a sister. She's a doctor. Let me say her name is Dr. Cassie Williams. Those of you up in the northwest part of the state, let's beat the bushes for get out to vote. I can't tell you who to vote for. I can't say that. But if I was in that area, I would go vote for somebody who had our students and our future best at hand. And so please consider that. The 2nd Congressional District, New Orleans, Jefferson Parish, parts of St. John, St. James, Iberville, parts of West Baton Rouge and East Baton Rouge. You have the 2nd Congressional District. That's the election Saturday. We have an opportunity to get out and vote. You heard the governor say, because the question was asked about whether or not we can get 2 black congresspersons from the state of Louisiana. We can. But whoever created this district packed it. It was packed. There was no way in the world that district should have came to Baton Rouge. That knocked out a lot of voters that we could have had for a black person coming from the Baton Rouge area. Those politicians do that. We have to stop them at the onset so they will not hurt our vote and our ability to get our voices heard. And we would have had 2 blacks in Congress. That's a whole lot better than having 1 from Louisiana. So you all, we have to start going to these redistricting write-ups where they do and create these maps. We have to go there and voice our opinion, yay or nay, because it's going to matter to us. So let's go. You all make sure you get out to vote this Saturday, the 24th. Get out to vote. The governor talked about the vaccinations. It was already tough. I've had both shots from Moderna. I know persons that have had the shot from Johnson. You know, I say go get the vaccination because the alternative to getting vaccinated, 10,000 persons from the state of Louisiana have died, 10,000. I can tell you the NAACP lost about 30 members that I know of directly. I know of. The president from Shreveport, the branch president from Shreveport, Lloyd Thompson, died of COVID. New Orleans had the treasurer and 3 other officers died from COVID. I could go on and on. But, you know, someone said, well, Mike, it's not FDA approved. I take vitamins every morning. The vitamins that I take not FDA approved either. It's not. I take a vitamin every morning. The first thing I see when I look at that bottle, it says, this is not FDA approved. But I take it. Y'all take vitamins too. But I'm telling you, I'm fighting against life or death. And you heard him say, early on during the pandemic, 7% of black folks were dying. 70%. 70. We have an opportunity. If you don't like your life, I know you might love your loved ones. Consider them, tell them, go get the shot. Go get the shot. We can turn those numbers around. Go get the shot. Also, wear your mask. He didn't say what he was going to do on the 28th in terms of the next phase. Wear your mask. I got 4 or 5 masks right here. I got one. I got even one that says what? Southern. Hello?
Okay, you were frozen for a second, Dr. McClanahan.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.